Environmental Education Collaborative. We appreciate everyone coming. We've got a robust agenda and also a robust attendance. This is Don Ball, I'm the president of Human Alliance, and I'll be your overall facilitator. So in terms of technical issues, if you have problems with the GoToMeeting piece, you can dial directly in, and you'll see this on this slide. And if you have technical issues, please call Erica at 410-279-3543. Today's webinar, we're being responsive to the many polls that we send out. Thank you all for filling those polls out and let us know what you're interested in. And in the big picture, we saw funding, model programs, and partnerships as key pieces of information. And the presenters today will be Dr. Kevin Maxwell, Dr. Campbell, Sarah Boder, Russell Dyer, and Dr. Dyer is bringing 2 students with him. We're very excited and very happy from Cleveland City Public Schools. Rashawn and Casey, thank you for joining, and Kathy and McLaughlin from that Project Learning Tree. So what I'd like to do is turn it over to Dr. Maxwell. Dr. Maxwell, thank you for the great work that you've done in Maryland and now across the country. So what guessing is that Dr. Maxwell, I know he was coming out of a meeting just minutes ago, and so why don't we skip down and kind of I'll take the first couple of slides for him. So with the Superintendents Collaborative, you can see this, our mission statement, that this is the opportunity to bring superintendents together to be able to look at system-wide environmental education and how it bolsters all of the important components that environmental education does, from STEM learning, civic engagement, preparing them for the workforce and for the challenges of the 21st century. Today, we'll learn more about funding. This call was scheduled just because the process of funding through Congress has been moving, and so we know a little bit more to be able to share those updates with you. We also are delighted that we've got model programs from California, Maryland, and Tennessee that we'd like to highlight so that we all can learn from the great lessons from around the country. And then finally, we want to hear about partners, because as I mentioned in our polls, you all told us that partnerships were a critical piece of information, and there are many, many partners out there on the ground ready, willing, and able to help, and we'll learn about how we'll make those connections. So let me turn it over to Sarah as we talk about the funding. Sarah, thank you for joining. And Sarah, as I think you can see, is the Director of Policy and Affiliate Relations with the North American Association for Environmental Education.
Thanks, Don. Just again, thanks to everyone who's on the call today. It's great to be with you all and have the opportunity to collectively explore this exciting new opportunity through the Every Student Succeeds Act. I'm going to just kind of try to be very quick in my overview of the funding structure and a little bit on the timeline, because I think the most exciting part of this webinar is going to come from our school system partners and their students, and we're all eager to hear about those models. But just briefly, for those of you who haven't tuned in before, there are some funding streams embedded in the Every Student Succeeds Act that provide explicit language in support of environmental education. And this is new to the K-12 education legislation. We know that lots of school systems have done great things with environmental education in the past, but we now have a real explicit opportunity and permission to use funds to support these programs. So I'm going to just touch on 2 grants in Title IV of the Every Student Succeeds Act. The first, Title IV Part A, is student support and academic enrichment grants, and that's being viewed to some extent as new funding, although it is a consolidation of many programs and some addition of new. And then an existing grant program, Title IV Part B, 21st Century Community Learning Centers. So Title IV Part A, just briefly, as set forth in the legislation, is authorized at $1.6 billion. In the fiscal year 2017 budget agreement, we were only allocated $400 million for that program. And we'll get into the sort of nitty-gritty of that in just a minute. But at the highest level, these grants are to support students and their academic enrichment through something that's being called a well-rounded education, among other eligible activities within that grant program. And well-rounded education then is further defined as a range of content areas, including environmental education and things like history, civics, financial literacy. And then there's some language around STEM in that grant program that is particularly interesting to environmental educators because it explicitly calls out field-based, hands-on, and service learning activities to support STEM, mastery of STEM skills. And so at this point, there are funds available to states for dissemination to school districts, but because of the delayed timeline of our fiscal year 2017 federal budget, states will have until the end of 2019 to expend those year one funds. And I'm sure we'll be learning about how future funding years overlay on that as we go forward. They are formula grants to the state in accordance with Title I. And then, as the law intends, states would turn around and then formula grant those funds to every school district. Because of the much smaller appropriation for this pot of funding, $400 million across all the school districts as opposed to $1.6 billion, states are allowed to implement this grant program as a competitive program. There are a very small number of states, as far as we can tell so far, that are electing to move forward with a competitive program, but because of the administrative complexities of setting up a new competitive grant program in what was really a relatively short window, most states are moving forward with a formula fund dissemination. We can go to the next slide. So again, these are formula grants to LEAs. They can also be distributed to a consortia of LEAs who might decide to collaborate on a particular idea. There is a priority for high need students and for geographic diversity in dissemination of the funds. And as I mentioned before, with this new pot of funding and the new language, superintendents have the authority to direct those funds to support environmental education. Next slide. So Part B of Title IV is an existing grant program that many folks are already familiar with. It is the 21st Century Community Learning Centers program, which focuses on out-of-school time programming, after-school programming, summer programming. It targets Title I schools and programs. And it is a very popular competitive grant program. We know that environmental education programs have been used in the 21st Century Community Learning Centers grant program very effectively, but now there is language that explicitly says that environmental literacy programs are eligible activities. We can go to the next slide. Almost, well, let's see, many months, almost a year after the Every Student Succeeds Act was signed into law, in response to a lot of question and a lot of inquiry and some confusion from a broad number of stakeholder groups, the U.S. Department of Education did issue some non-regulatory guidance to states specifically to the use of Title IV Part A funds. Because there are so many eligible activities outlined within that grant program, the guidance document, is pretty hefty in trying to cover the ways in which states and districts might consider using their funds to support a wide range of activities. They did opt to include a section on environmental education and explicitly talk about the value of environmental education to supporting academic achievement and skills development. And in reporting on the district's potential use of funds for environmental education, they spotlighted our partners at Project Learning Tree and the high quality resources and programs that they have available. And they also pointed to NAAEE, the organization that I work for, to our guidelines for excellence in K through 12 education. And so those are, Kathy will talk about this more, but both organizations that you should consider as resources and hubs for additional information. So that's kind of the old news in terms of the funding. I'm going to just touch on a few things that we do know. If we can just go to the next slide. Just quickly, as I mentioned, the Part A allocation for fiscal year 2017 was $400 million. The Part B was $1.2 billion. So really sustaining funding for the 21st Century Community Learning Centers, and a little bit of a struggle to get off of the ground with robust funding for the academic student support and academic enrichment activities. We do see a bit of a boost coming in the next federal budget agreement. The Senate right now proposal includes $450 million. The House proposal includes $500 million. And then again, in both chambers, pretty high level support for continuing the 21st Century Community Learning Centers program. I will say that there are a large number of very vocal stakeholder groups across the country who are continuing to advocate vociferously for meaningful funding for the Part A programs, and we're really hopeful that over time we will be able to build that fund up significantly. And Don mentioned this briefly, but I would also just point out that as of July, states do have their Title IV funding in hand. Many states, as most of you probably know, are still revising their ESSA implementation plans or are waiting for feedback from U.S. Department of Education. And so we are a bit challenged in trying to understand exactly what the status of the dissemination of that funding is down to the district level. And I would welcome anyone who wants to sort of talk through the technicalities of this further to feel free to contact me directly, as well as anyone who has additional information about the way that this is playing out in your state or district. We are working hard to sort of collect as much information and as many different specific examples of how funding is being disseminated so that we can, continue to share that information with our colleagues and yours moving forward. So, it's a little bit of a boring topic, but I enjoy it. So I'm welcome to talk it through in more detail with anyone who might be interested. And now I think, I'm sorry. Just quickly, as I think I've already mentioned, states are by and large planning to use formula distribution. We will share information about specific state plans with anyone who wants it and make that available. I should mention that Title IV funding is transferable to Titles I and II under the law, and that can cause a little bit of concern for folks who want to see that funding used for well-rounded education. But the good news is that Title II funding is where professional development dollars sit, and professional development dollars can be used to support a well-rounded education. And so should Title IV money be folded into Title II, it may actually be a good opportunity for just adding more support around teacher professional development, which is so critical, as we all know, to making real systemic change. So now, after I've said all that, it is my pleasure, if he has joined the call, to turn it over to friend and colleague, Dr. Kevin Maxwell, who's CEO of Prince George's County Public Schools in Maryland. Dr. Maxwell, are you on the call?
Yeah, so Sarah, I just got a text from Dr. Maxwell. He's got some technical difficulties. He'll be here very briefly. So what we'll do is go straight to California, and then once he picks up, then we'll go backwards a little bit on the PowerPoint presentation. And so what I'd like to do then, thank you, Sarah, very much for that wonderful insight and the hard work to kind of make that happen. And so I'd like to transition to California, and we're just so lucky to have Dr. Ann Campbell as the superintendent of San Mateo County and doing really, really great work. And so Dr. Campbell, welcome and thank you, and we look forward to hearing more about the model partnerships and programs you have.
Thanks so much, Don. And certainly thanks to you and to Erica for organizing this call so beautifully today. Very well coordinated. So if we could go on to the next slide. And wanted to give you a sense, everybody, sort of how California is positioning itself with environmental education, and then take it down to the local level where I work. In 2014, our state superintendent for public instruction, Tom Torlakson, convened an environmental education task force to create an environmental education plan. He's a former science teacher and a real advocate for the environment, and thought it was very important. So this team of educators and non-formal providers and various public officials gathered to craft a plan. And the result is the picture that you see there on the screen. And the two links there will take you, once this is posted to live, you can get online and really get a chance to look at the blueprint. But it's important to see the subtitle of that blueprint is Educating Every California Student in, About, and for the Environment. And that really is providing us with our North Star as we think about how we're doing environmental education in California. We want to get kids out into the environment. We want to teach them about it. And we certainly want to help them become responsible stewards of the environment as they move forward into adulthood. And then once that blueprint was put together, that was good. But we needed to have a group that kind of put everything together, and so a statewide task force was convened that is really trying to disseminate and plan for getting environmental education in a very robust way at all of the local levels. Our challenge is in California, the Inverness Study Group in 2014 did a study that showed that only 13% of our schools in California had integrated environmental education into their instruction, and they were only spending each school less than $5,000 a year on it. And I would say also, certainly we're trying to change this now, but traditionally environmental education has been the opportunity for kids to go to outdoor residential camp. And that's a really important experience for kids to have. We have in California 1.4 million 4th through 6th graders, but only 113,000 of them have had the opportunity to go to outdoor ed. So that's a pretty big disconnect. So our challenge basically is, how do we do environmental literacy for everybody? And I would just highlight three really important parts of that. One is equity of access. For example, in my county, in San Mateo County, we border the Pacific Ocean and the San Francisco Bay. We have many kids in our county who have not been to the ocean. And we also have certainly many children with special needs, and you can see that picture up in the left-hand corner, that we want to be sure are getting out and having access to the environment and learning about it as well. The next one to highlight is collaboration. We really believe that environmental education is something that's best done together, whether you are teachers working together on developing units or kids working together on various environmental education projects. And then very importantly in California, and certainly across the country as well, we have such a diverse student body in our state. We want to be sure that the activities that we're doing are culturally responsive to the different cultures and experience of our kids in California. If we could do the next one. So the way that we've pretty much figured out how to fund environmental education in my county is through graded funding and partnerships. And certainly the ESSA Title IV funds in California, the title funds are basically distributed on a formulaic basis. Not a lot of money, but it's some, and we're happy to use that for our environmental education. In California, our environmental license plate program provides about $400,000 a year that schools can use for environmental literacy, and then the California Environmental Protection Agency also provides about $2 million. That doesn't go very far, quite frankly. And this past year, we worked together to pass a Senate bill sponsored by Senator Bill Allen, Senate Bill 424, that provided several $1 million to do our statewide network of environmental educators called CREEK to support school districts. So that's really positive. But I would say that most of the funding comes from people's local funds, either through their general fund or through grants. And my office is a regional office. There are 58 counties in California, and we have 23 school districts in San Mateo County. And what we do a variety of things, but one of the chief functions we have is to focus on professional development. And so several years ago, we thought, okay, we're really going to work on environmental education in San Mateo County. We started the San Mateo Environmental Collaborative, which we call SMELC. And there's a link there that can take you to it. But it's a summertime institute where we bring teachers in and we bring non-formal environmental education providers in and work on developing units for teachers to go back into their classrooms to teach. And then it all culminates in a capstone activity about halfway through the next school year where teachers share the experiences that they've had in teaching their units. We started with a relatively small group of teachers for that, and we have found that there's a great demand for it. And we've been doing it every summer. We have teams of teachers from schools coming because they realize the importance of collaboration and working together on it. We've been especially blessed in this project to have Ken Strands, which is one of the premier environmental education nonprofits operating in California, partner with us. And you can also see in the picture with all of the different partners that are working with us on the environmental collaborative. And I would say what I have learned about this over time is those partnerships are just so important, and they make the lives of teachers much easier because they can bring in special resources to help teachers as they are working on environmental education in their classrooms. And then we've got one more slide, I think. So as we think about braided funding and partnerships, one of the things that we did at our office was to say, well, we really want to expand what we're doing in environmental education. We sponsor an outdoor residential camp, which is terrific, but we felt like we needed to be doing more. We'd done the Environmental Learning Collaborative and felt that we were really onto something. And so we convened an advisory committee in 2015 to help us brainstorm ways that we might expand what we're doing in environmental education. And then the following year, we brought together a group of probably 60 to 65 people, I'd say, from all kinds of different sectors and walks of life to do a design thinking challenge about how should our office really expand the work that it's doing in environmental education. And lots of things came out of that, but one of the best is that we decided that we would put our own local funding into having an environmental education coordinator. And Andrew Yogoyan has just come on board a couple of months ago, so we're very excited about the role that she has. She's going to be an advocate for environmental education, help with professional development. And then there's a link there where it says Resource Connector, where basically she's looking upon, one of the things she's doing is trying to connect all of the teachers in our county to different environmental education resources, but we want to make that available to anybody who's interested in it. So that's a link that people can go to as well. So the tab for the work that we're doing in environmental education comes to about $250,000 a year. We have 95,000 kids in our county, so that's about $2.50 a student. Doesn't seem like a lot of money, but we really think that by focusing our resources and helping teachers and schools and superintendents with collaboration and development of different environmental education experiences for kids, we can really make a difference. So we're always on the lookout for additional funding, and that generally tends to come in the way of grants. And I think there actually are quite a few out there as you're looking about different ways to fund environmental education as well. And I'm now going to turn it over to Russell Dyer in Tennessee to take it from here.
Yeah, and I'll interrupt for a second. First of all, thank you, and fantastic. And I know for those environmental education leaders on the phone, it's just, they're all smiling broadly at hearing the wonderful work you're doing. And, coming from a superintendent, it's just fabulous. Dr. Maxwell has joined the call, so I thought I'd do is just back up for a second and turn it back to Dr. Maxwell and welcome him. Thank you, Dr. Maxwell. I appreciate you joining.
Yeah, thanks so much, Don. Sort of be a minute or two behind everybody jumping on. It's a busy time, but just the kind of the things that we're talking about. I mean, we had a conversation last week about ESSA, and we do have a budget session coming up where we're going to ask to increase the amount of money available, but we're going back and forth with folks about the ability to transfer between categories of the title, like Title IV to Title II and those kind of things. But we're going to use, the ESSA funding that's available to us to continue to expand the work that we're doing. So, we worked a lot, with expanding the work at our Outdoor Education Center. We've been working very hard to develop we have one of I think the only arts integration graduation requirement in the country, but we have a part of that work at every grade level for our children. So we've been continuing to expand and roll that work out and make sure that those experiences are available for kids. We've done a great deal of work coordinating with nonprofits and agencies. We have quarterly meetings with our partners that are, a half a day long, and we meet and we highlight what different partners are doing for the work. So we've had, people present on like arts integration lessons for kindergartners that use environmental education as the the platform for that work. We have a lot of different partners from the Patuxent watershed folks, the Anacostia watershed folks, the Park and Planning, the Department of Parks, Department of the Environment. We have the Bay Foundation, the Bay Trust, Mayo, a whole bunch of different partners and things in the room, which really, helps us, tremendously in making opportunities for our kids. We're doing a big retrofitting program with our Department of the Environment over on the county side, and then coordinating resources with them and sharing and talking about how they can help us and how we can help them is really, really important. And then working, because they help us a great deal with getting opportunities for our kids. We have a foundation, Alice Ferguson Foundation here, and they host kids out on a farm, and they do training of our teachers, just as, two examples of one, group that we work with. And then we try to coordinate the programs and align grant opportunities and those kind of things, and make sure that we're all collaborating and working together to make sure that we're serving the children of our county as well as we possibly can. And I think with that, I'll stop on that slide.
Well, Dr. Maxwell, thank you. And I just want to really applaud the great work in Prince George's County, Maryland. And, just highlight the quarterly meetings. If you think about it, as superintendent, coming to the meetings, they're, as I mentioned, half day long, bringing all of the partners together. I've seen kind of on the outside looking in, just what an impact it's made, I know, on the ability for a county to reach out and coordinate the resources and partners. So thank you, and we really applaud the great work there. So what I'd like to do is...
Let me ask a quick technical question. I've got the webinar up, but I'm not connecting on audio, so I'm on my phone. But is that going to connect at 2:30, or do we know? Or are we just going to be on phones?
Yeah, I think that if you're on the phone, we'll probably just stay on the phone. Probably the best thing to do. So we'll pick you up on the we're being recorded, and so we can hear you loud and clear if that works for you.
Okay, it works fine. Great.
Now, Dr. Dyer, thank you again for being a co-host of the AASA conference. We'll talk about that in a second. But we look forward to hearing your presentation of you and your students. So thank you for joining today.
Well, thank you, and we're glad to be with you today from Cleveland, Tennessee. We're on the outskirts of Chattanooga, in between Chattanooga and Knoxville on I-75, just to let you know geographically sort of where we are. We have in our school on the ground 5,700 students in grades K through 12. We're a public school system here in the area. We have a county district that we sit inside of. In our district, we have 9 schools, 6 elementary, 1 middle, 1 high school, and we have an alternative high school, just to kind of give you an idea. And the focus for us today is really on what we do at Cleveland High School, and specifically in their environmental education program, led by a fantastic teacher that you see on the screen. We have some wonderful classes that you're going to hear about, and also a wonderful club activity, and a wonderful club that does wonderful activities. And we have 2 students who are going to shine light on that today. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to our students, let them introduce themselves, tell you a little bit about who they are, and they're going to walk you through. We have some additional slides with pictures that they can tell you about, and be glad to take any questions when we're done.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Roshan Soni, and I'd like to take a moment to sort of talk about a couple of the activities that Cleveland High School engages in for the purpose of environmental conservation. So for one, we have a club at our school called Environmental Awareness Association, and through this club, students volunteer for up to an hour after school every Friday, and they start by bringing all the materials from throughout the school outside and then sorting them into the designated containers from there for preparation to go to the processing facility. I think that this is the program that students have a large incentive to take part in, not only because it provides an opportunity to gain volunteer hours that can be used for scholarship programs or colleges, but at the same time, it allows students to engage in a really beneficial activity. I think students recognize this and want to get involved. Another example of engaging in environmental conservation is through research projects as part of aquatic biology scientific research class. For instance, my project dealt with documenting the concentration of microplastics in our local creek system, Mouse Creek. In this project, I had to collect data from field sites, and I think that it is in these type of projects that we truly develop critical thinking skills and engage in inquiry-based learning that is incredibly valuable to the students. I think that it is in these programs that we are really prepared for the real world in a way that goes beyond the traditional curriculum and really challenges us to think ahead to the issues of the future. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Casey Schote, and through Cleveland High School, I've been given several opportunities to benefit the environment. I was 2 years ago, my family and I decided to take part in the Tennessee River cleanup, and I've done that 3 times since, and it's really changed the way that I do day-to-day things. Instead of just like letting that plastic bag fly out the window, I actually like stop my car and go get it, because you'll see an accumulation of things like that. And also through Ms. Cuervo and Cleveland High School, we got to go to Nashville and accept an award by Keep America Beautiful through a part called Keep Tennessee Beautiful, and we got to listen to all these people talk, and it was another life-changing experience. And through the Environmental Awareness Association, I was actually given the opportunity for a summer job through Southeastern Conservation Corps, and that was a 6-week program that I did, and we cleaned trails, and we became more environmentally aware, and we basically lived off of what we had on our backs for those 6 weeks. And it was, I mean, I've been affected like for the rest of my life. I'm also, like Roshan, participating in our aquatic biology research project, and my research project is how fertilizers affect the environment around us, and I'm doing that through like golf courses around here, and I get to go all the way up to the Ocoee and just sit and just look how beautiful it is. And I couldn't do that without Cleveland High School or the opportunities I've been given through them.
So as you can hear from our students, and we have a lot of really neat programming that's taking place both on the curriculum side and also outside of the classroom as far as clubs are concerned. You heard about Mouse Creek. That's a creek system that runs through our town, right through the middle of town, right next to the high school. And it's really neat to see the students when you drive by wading in the water and doing sampling of the water system, and also the cleanups that they take part in. Geographically, we are located really close to the Ocoee National River. You've probably heard of that with whitewater rafting and things. And also we're very close to Cherokee National Forest, as well as a lot of other really neat outdoor spaces. And I think here in Cleveland, especially in this area, environmental education and keeping the environment pristine is a really big deal. You know, we do a lot of work in that. We have a lot more we'd love to do if the money was available and the budget was there. That's something that we continue to work on. But we do a lot of neat work, and we're very, very glad that AASA and this particular group is going to be in Tennessee so we can showcase what we do. So I think that's it. Do you have anything else? Okay. Students are shaking their heads no, and that'll end our part of the presentation. We'll hand it back over.
Well, Dr. Dara, thank you, and Rashawn and Casey, thank you so much for your wonderful, insightful presentation. I think everyone in the country is excited to go to Tennessee and look at the great resources. You could have their mouths creaking, you know, do some of the work you've done. But congratulations on that great work. I'd like to turn now to the whole point of partnerships and ask Kathy McLaughlin. I think everyone knows that Kathy and Sarah, the two preeminent environmental education national leaders, staffing this coalition, this collaboration. But Kathy, as a longtime head of Project Learning Tree, thank you and welcome.
Well, thank you, Don, and thank you, students, for taking the time to share your stories. That was great, and I would just suggest we might want to add those stories to our SEEK website, because it's always good to have authentic voices speaking the truth. So thank you. And really, you all set me up for talking about partnerships, because all three of the state examples and models are, I think, you shared the idea they're successful because of the partnerships that you've put in place. And so as you think about the models that were shared and you're thinking about your own state and your own goals, you know, what are some of the things you might want to think about as you determine why you want a partnership and then how that partnership would work? So we really are supporting the development of state environmental literacy plans, and Sarah and NAAA have been key leaders in that effort, and can get some more information from NAAA on those plans. But, you know, does your state already have one? And if it does, who was involved with that, and what were their goals of the plan, and how can you fit into that? What's already happening in your states? I mean, it's always disheartening to hear about the numbers of students that are able to be reached through some of these programs when we look at the big picture, as Anne shared in her example in California. But that things are happening, and I think we need to take a look at what is already happening and how can we leverage those opportunities for the partnerships that we're trying to build. And is it happening in a whole school system and a whole county-wide, or is it happening in a school, or is it happening in a classroom? You know, EE can happen in all those different places, and of course part of the SEEK mission is to get district-wide collaboratives going and support environmental education on a grander scale, but that doesn't mean that one of your goals might be to start at a school level as well. And then really thinking about how much are we looking to advance environmental education across the curriculum. Some of the examples we heard today are great examples of what can happen in, say, environmental science classes or biology classes, the arts classes that Dr. Maxwell mentioned. But there's other ways to advance environmental education across the curriculum, so we should take a look at that as well. And love the models that were shared today, and there are others, and part of the role that SEEK is trying to do is identify other models that can be used. So, you know, we would encourage you to take a look at what you would see as opportunities for advancing environmental education through models in your own state as well. If I could have the next slide, please. So we heard great examples of who you're partnering with, and I loved hearing about that. And, you know, it's really about bringing the right people to the table, right? And who are some of those people, and why do you want to have them there? Certainly, it helps to have those who are making the decisions at the district level participate in this, and we have great examples that were shared today, and use these folks to put some pressure on your own district administrators to get them involved and involved in the partnerships. Certainly curriculum specialists, and not just the science specialists, but as we heard, you know, from arts, history, civics, social engagement, all of that, those folks are interested in getting their particular specialty across, and EE is a great way to do that. Certainly looking at the science teachers, that's one of our first go-to places. They often have that, they're the early adopters of environmental education. We want to continue to partner with those folks. STEM, of course, is hot, 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 and so we in the EE world kind of want to call it STEAM, you know, engineering, environment, and math, so, you know, involving those programs as well. And then really critical, and you heard this from Anne in particular, about involving the local environmental education providers, those organizations, often the NGOs that are working at the community level to provide, whether it's supplementary curriculum materials for educators, materials to use in their classrooms, or is it to provide professional development? Anne said, you know, partnerships are so important to be able to bring in resources into the teachers' classrooms, and so that's a good reason to partner with those local EE providers. And then state and local land managers, those folks who might be managing those resources. We heard from Tennessee about the U.S. Forest Service land adjacent to your school county, and so I'm sure the folks working for the Forest Service there would be happy to lend a hand and help out with any new efforts that you might want to do there. So these folks they have the land. I just recently participated in a National Land Trust meeting in Denver, Colorado. And I had so many folks come up to my exhibit because they said, okay, we've put aside this land, we have it, now we want to get kids out there to learn about the land. What can we do? You know, how can we do this? So there's places for people to go and connect with your schools. So next slide is the partner examples, and so just a minute just to mention PLT, and we are just one of many programs out there. I'm just honored to be a part of this partnership, so we're just providing PLT as an example. And we do have state leaders in every state. We connect with the other environmental education organizations in each state and slide with all of her partners. PLT is proud to be a part of that effort as well in San Mateo County. Dr. Maxwell talked about MAO, which is the Maryland Association for Environmental and Outdoor Education. They are the state sponsor for Project Learning Tree in Maryland. And then as well, we connect with districts across the country. So we can go to the next slide. And just a little bit about some of the resources that we would have available and make available for your work. Things like on our website, we have some specific information for school administrators. Why is EE important? What's available through SEEK? We link back to NAAEE and the SEEK website as well, providing that support and for why we want to do EE in our school and how we can get help to do that. We also provide supplementary curriculum materials pre-K through high school. These are aligned to both state and national standards. We have both online materials as well as print materials available to educators, and they're available through professional development. I know that part of as Sarah was describing, the title funds could be switched over to PD, and that is really helpful to get the educators in your school comfortable with, you know, going outside, using the environment, learning about the environment, helping students to see the importance of the environment. And so PD is really critical for that. So programs like Project Learning Tree and many others provide that PD. We happen to provide it in person, in service days, pre-service for college students, as well as online professional development. And then one thing I just wanted to point out, Anne said something that, you know, a lot of environmental education is best done together. And she mentioned, you know, environmental education projects. So we have a funding source. I was thinking about the class in Tennessee could apply for a GreenWorks grant from us to help support some of the work they're doing to keep the river clean and do the recycling projects at their school. We offer small grants to students and their teachers across the country to do environmental service learning projects. So they do need to be connected to curriculum, and they do need to be about the environment. And we also provide resources to green your school, helping students do investigations around 5 topic areas: energy, water, waste, environmental quality, school site, and water. And there are free resources, downloadable resources available on our website to support the idea of taking a look at your school. So these are just a few of the things we have to offer, and now I'd like to turn it back to Sarah to talk about her organization, NAAAE. Sarah.
Thanks, Kathy. I'm back. So just very briefly, want to touch on some of the resources that we have available at NAAEE. Because we are the Professional Association for Environmental Education, we do have affiliate organizations across the country. The Maryland Environmental and Outdoor Education Association that Kathy mentioned is not only the PLT coordinating entity for Maryland, but is also our state affiliate. And that's true in many states where our points of contact are either the same person or are working really closely together in collaboration. So we offer a network, and through that network, we offer connections to environmental education programs, partners, and resources. In many cases, your state environmental education affiliate is going to be a go-to hub for identifying program providers, for linking to resources, and to connecting with colleagues and even funding opportunities. So I would encourage you, if you haven't connected to your state environmental education association, to check them out and see what they might have to offer. Next slide. And then, in our effort to really support the kinds of incredible models and best practices that we heard about today in the presentations from Tennessee and our exemplary students, and the presentations from districts in California and Maryland, we do offer some exemplars and best practice resources for integrated pre-K through 12 environmental education. I mentioned our guidelines for excellence in environmental education, and that includes guidelines for integration of environmental education at every grade band, as well as guidelines for excellence in developing and administering teacher professional development programs. In the K-12 guidelines, there are crosswalks for the ways in which environmental education programs and practices support NGSS and other curricular goals. And we are actually in the process of updating those guidelines to reflect some of the intense transformation that's been taking place in K-12 education. But I would really recommend that resource to you. We also have some frameworks for systemic environmental literacy planning and implementation. So how do you create a district-wide plan? And to some of Kathy's earlier points, who are the partners that are most helpful to have at the table, and what does that process really look like? Another really good resource, if you're thinking about really doing this across a grade or throughout a district, how can you really plan holistically in ways that help you achieve multiple goals? And then finally, we do have some research on the value of environmental education for student outcomes. So for those who might not quite be sold or feel like you need some data to support the case for expanded environmental education in your school or district, we have recently worked with Stanford University to conduct an analysis of all of the peer-reviewed research on the impact of environmental education on K-12 student outcomes, with very, very positive results and really strong data to support the effectiveness of environmental education programs for not just increasing student knowledge across a particular content area, but for really developing those 21st century skills, critical thinking, problem solving, collaboration, and so forth. Lastly, we're here, I think, as our Upstream Alliance and PLT, but to provide technical assistance, and in particular, as you probably gleaned from my earlier comments, really trying to work through the weeds of leveraging some of these federal grant dollars to support good work across your district. And we really want to be available to help provide some guidance in that process moving forward. And Don, I think that's it for me, and I'll turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you for the great work that the North American Association for Environmental Education is doing and what the work you're doing there. So looking ahead, Dr. Dyer mentioned this, and what I'd like to mention is, we'll just in a couple of minutes transition to question and answers. So please, go to your chat box on your GoToMeeting dialog box and type in any questions you might have. So in the meantime, I hope everyone is looking to participate at the AASA conference. We do have a session on February 16th, 3:45 to 4:45, and we know from the polling that we sent out, the surveys, that many of you all are anticipating to join that session. So thank you very much. We will also have a conference field trip similar to what we did in New Orleans. I'm delighted to say that we have an on-the-ground group in Nashville that, as we speak, are looking at different sites. They are intent to make sure that Nashville and Tennessee shines, and they're not at all. They recognize the power of the Bayou in New Orleans and 93 superintendents we have there. Nashville and Tennessee's got just as much to offer. So we'll make that decision next week, and when we do AASA, I will be sending out under Dr. Maxwell and Dr. Campbell's emails an invitation to all of the people that have RSVP'd to that conference. So we expect that the field trip to be likely to be on the 15th or the 16th, but that is to be determined. So let me just open it up and see if there are any questions people might have. And if we don't have questions, what I'll do is turn it to Dr. Maxwell for any closing comments. So let me just see. I have a comment, of course, from those who can see from Dr. Metzler, just thanking people and looking forward to seeing everyone in Nashville. And so absent any questions, what I'll do, Dr. Maxwell, is turn it over to you and for any closing comments you might have. And thank you for your participation. Thank you for all the participation, all the participants today.
I'd like to thank everybody as well, our partners and the other participants. I think, this work is really important and has, some really great opportunities for all of us. I see Erica's question to everyone, just say, what are you most interested in learning about? And I know on the spreadsheet it had some things, but if there are other things as a result of this conversation, or if nothing's changed, if you want to make sure that you forward that information, here, or forward it through the email chain that you signed up for this with, that would be fine. We want to make sure that we're addressing in Nashville what you want to hear about and not what we think you want to hear about. So we, again, want to make sure that we tailor this as much as we can. So again, if anybody on the chat wants to, respond to that question, or if you want to send it separately, that's fine. I would say that in talking with AASA, they're going to actually, send out, we're going to give them the message and they're going to send it out. I think they gave us a list a couple of years ago, but they have shifted to wanting to do that themselves rather than share those lists. I'm not sure, what caused that shift, but we are going to get that message out here pretty quickly. I have talked to them and I'm sure that that's going to be fine. So, I think that will be great. And I think that, not to belabor the point, without questions, I just, want to go back to thanking everybody again and making sure that when we see you in Nashville, we're addressing your questions or your concerns, the things you want to learn about. And so if you would, again, share those with us between now and then, that would be fantastic. So Don, if you want to just wrap it up, we're good.
Great. Thanks, Dr. Maxwell. And thank you, everyone. This session has been recorded, and we'll send this out so people can share this webinar to colleagues that were unable to join at this particular time. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you all in Nashville. And really congratulations, particularly to these two students and Dr. Russell Dyer. You got to be so proud. But thanks, everybody. And we'll see you February 16th, if not before, which might be the 15th. Thanks all. Bye-bye.
Yep. Thanks. Bye-bye.